Southern California, good evening and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. We have ourselves a jam-packed show as always, such as the last week of the Pac-12 men's basketball schedule. Will USC or UCLA finish atop the Pac-12 regular season standings, or are they just going to get in each other's way? Because that's what's happening right now. And Cal Baptist women's basketball has a chance to make history in an unusual way. What is this type of history, I dare you ask? You'll have to find out. Also, conference tournaments are happening in the West Coast Conference. Which teams are in terms of Southern California, and which teams are taking the next bus home to the off-season. Also, we have the LA Kings who are still on the hot streak. They're cooled off a little, but hey, at least they're not the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks are doing atrocious. It is looking like another tank job this year. Also, UCLA, USC, and San Diego State have released their football schedules. It's that time of year again. Holy moly, this is going to be sweet. Also, San Diego State men's basketball won the Mountain West Conference Championship in the regular season. Good job, San Diego State men's basketball. Finally, you were able to clinch it. Can they go deep in the NCAA tournament? Also, NBA All-Star Weekend is here. Will Team LeBron be able to guide his team to victory, or will Team Durant have something to say about it? All that and more here on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you all for tuning in on this beautiful Friday evening, and I'm glad you all are doing well. And if you're in California, definitely wear a jacket because it is cold outside. It is windy as heck, my dudes and dudettes. So definitely dress accordingly when it comes to the weather if you plan on going outside. And without any further delay, now that I got that out of the way, it is time to begin with some SoCal sports action. But first and foremost, we have ourselves a word from our sponsors. 3 words from our sponsors. 3 words from our 3 sponsors. Anyway, iSports Radio's first sponsor is Legacy Financial. 2020 was a tough year. However, staying positive, keeping your faith, and continuing to work hard is the goal. If you're in a financial struggle at the moment, you're doing well, you want to get to the next level, and or you're looking for a new opportunity to work for yourself and earn money part-time, give AO a call at 510-928-2104. That number again is 510-928-2104 to book your appointment today. AO and her husband Andrew are just 2 people on a mission to help families build a legacy, because every family needs a legacy. And you can follow them on Twitter at legacy_uncut and on Instagram at sims_uncut. So that's our first sponsor. Our second sponsor is Mama's Always Right Media. And by the way, that right is spelled W-R-I-T-E, not R-I-G-H-T. Right as in you're writing a paper. Anyway, Mama's Always Right Media is the second sponsor for IE Sports Radio. Are you feeling overwhelmed with schoolwork? Are those essays keeping you up at night? Don't lose sleep. Pick up the phone. Mama's Always Right Writing Agency will give you quality essays, and they will always make their deadlines. Sleep soundly knowing that they are on the job. For more information, call 626-653-3649. That number again is 626-653-3649. And while you're at it, definitely check out Mama's Always Right Media's podcasts, such as It Goes Down in the PM. make sure you check out the newest episode of It Goes Down in the PM, brought to you by Mama's Always Right Media. One of their episodes is You Won't Like Me When I'm Hangry, and I can definitely relate, because I need food. Anyway, the second podcast from Mama's Always Right Media is Coffee After Dark. Don't miss the next chapter of your favorite love story. Check out Season 2 of Coffee After Dark, brought to you by Mama's Always Right Media, where they will help you open your business from start to finish. And I believe that was actually Coffee After Dark that had one of the episodes titled, You Won't Like Me When I'm Hangry. So, there's that right there. So, yeah, that was my bad. I kind of got the two shows mixed up in their titles, but that it's all good in the hood, because it's definitely worth checking out, because it's a great podcast. Now for our third sponsor from IE Sports Radio, that is the Sports Rundown. Are you a sports fan but have too much going on in your life these days to keep up with the 24/7 sports news cycle? Or maybe you are new to sports and want to understand the nuances better. If so, then the Sports Rundown is for you. They are a new podcast that gives you basic, professional, and collegiate sports news, stats, tidbits, and fun facts by the time you get to work, start that second cup of coffee, or finish walking the dog. Enough information to make you rich with knowledge involving sports while talking about the current sporting events, and they will teach you something fun along the way, like mascots, uniforms, history, feel-good stories, and sports rules. They even cover the Premier League for all you soccer studs out there. New episodes drop Monday and Friday mornings, so come give them a listen. Thank you to our three sponsors for IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I definitely appreciate it, and it really does mean a lot. And definitely do check out our three sponsors. And I actually am fearing that Coffee After Dark was actually the one with the... Coffee After Dark was the one with the episode of You Wouldn't Like Me When I'm Hangry. So there's that, or hungry or hangry. I just like hangry, because it actually does say hangries, which I understand. Hangry is a word, so don't you forget about that. Okay, now let's get into the Southern California sports action. We'll start with college hoops with the Pac-12 men's basketball. So, you know what? I don't even know anymore when it comes to USC and UCLA. Last Saturday marked one of the darkest days in terms of UCLA and USC men's basketball history. In terms of the Pac-12, of course. So USC, oh my god, where do I begin with USC? So obviously last Thursday they got drubbed by Colorado. Worst loss of the season. But now I think I found an even worse loss for them this season, and that is against Utah. USC lost to Utah. I don't remember the exact score, but they got beaten by double digits, which was absolutely atrocious. And they fell out of the top 25 rankings, which really sucks, because, that's kind of is a testament to how good you are, and with how the Pac-12 is a complete gong show, it's hard to believe that USC would lose that type of game. So yeah, USC lost to Utah 71-61. Absolutely disappointing. USC actually led only by 2 at halftime, and then Utah just took over. I was very disappointed by them. I couldn't believe how badly they lost. I know it's only by 10, but to me that feels like 20, especially since Utah didn't have one of its talented players. And Utah's not that good. They're the third worst team in the conference, which is very disappointing, if you ask me. So, I don't know what went wrong with USC against Utah. Were they just that crushed against Colorado, or was Utah just really that much of a trap game for USC? Either way, it was a huge disappointment, and that loss is actually starting to prove very large, as I'll be talking about in a little bit. So, USC, unfortunately, couldn't get win number 20. So this means that UCLA has a chance to pretty much pull away from USC in the Pac-12 men's basketball standings, right? No, because UCLA also kind of stumbled on the road as they lost to Colorado in Colorado's last home game of the season, as UCLA lost 70-61, almost near identical scores with USC and UCLA's losses. Yeah, that's kind of weird right there. So, okay, now I could justify UCLA's loss just because Colorado is such a good team. And I actually did call UCLA Colorado, so it was fun times. But McKinley Wright is a freaking beast. He had 26 points, and he is a possible Pac-12 Player of the Year candidate with other players such as Evan Mobley, and then I think one kid from and Chris Duarte of Oregon, and maybe one kid from Arizona. It all depends on what the coaches have to say. But UCLA lost to Colorado 70-61, which I knew UCLA was kind of going to go into that match up in a tough sort of way, just because that is Colorado's last home game of the season, and I highly doubt they'll be getting any more home games unless they're randomly a number 1 seed, which they are not deserving of a number 1 seed. Let's just get that out of the way. Colorado is nowhere near deserving of the number 1 seed. So UCLA still running a half game ahead of USC in the Pac-12 standings. But you want to know who caught up to both of those two teams? Oregon. Ever since Oregon got stomped on by USC last Monday, or not this last Monday, the last Monday as in the following Monday from last week, Oregon has been on a tear. They actually won 4 in a row. They barely squeaked by Stanford by 3 points. They beat Cal quite handily, and then also they beat Arizona this past Monday. So there's that too. So that is another team that could win the Pac-12 regular season men's basketball championship. And as I mentioned this past Monday, let's go to this week and what's been happening with USC and UCLA. So for UCLA, they actually had a crucial game this past Wednesday as they played Oregon. This was actually a made-up game as the two were actually supposed to play each other twice, but unfortunately Oregon had to postpone both of its games because of COVID outbreaks and whatnot, and yeah, it kind of sucked, but they had to move. They finally got to move that game to the final week of the Pac-12 regular season. So there's that right there. So I actually called this game, and it was kind of fun, and it was actually back and forth in the first half, and then the second half, it looked as if UCLA was actually going to pull away from Oregon, as UCLA only led 39-37 at halftime. But then in the second half, UCLA went up by as many as 9. It was just that close, that back and forth. Every time one team had a 5-point lead, the other team would go on like a scoring run to go ahead even further. So UCLA eventually went up by 9, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, UCLA has fully got this. And this match, and Oregon and UCLA was not only important for both those teams, but they were also important for USC. USC needed UCLA to win. Unfortunately, Oregon actually became a thing because Oregon caught fire. I don't know what happened, but Oregon caught fire. Players such as Chris Duarte, LJ Figueroa, the list goes on and on. Will Richardson just caught fire. I don't know what happened in that second half. I think it was the second part of the second half. And then Oregon just came from behind and won 82-74. UCLA turned the ball over, I believe it was... They turned it over 14 times, but in the second half, UCLA turned the ball over 12 times alone, which that is not going to get the job done, especially when you're facing Oregon. Oregon loves to run backcourt trap and pressure defense in the backcourt. So I think UCLA really... That loss really hurt UCLA because now it really sets them back. It also hurts USC because now they have to win. They basically need help from none other than Oregon State. Speaking of USC, USC trounced Stanford this past Wednesday. Now that was no surprise. I knew USC needed to win that game because if not, then Pac-12 regular season hopes are gone. And they not only beat Stanford. No. USC not only beat Stanford, they blew them out 79-42. I was quite astounded on how how UCLA, or not UCLA, USC actually decided to play that type of ball game and hold their opponents to only 42 points. I believe the 42 points are the fewest they've given up all year. I'm looking at their schedule. Yes, it is. Yes, the 42 points this year are a season low, and then also Stanford never trailed, so I obviously ought to mention that. But USC stomped on Stanford, and the first match was actually quite close, and that's a very bad loss for Stanford. Not only marginally, but that actually hurts their chances of making the NCAA tournament as an at-large team, because it looked as if Stanford was going to get in. It looked like they were going to be a Final Four teams in, and then they had so many bad losses to the point where now they're probably a last 4 teams out. If not, they're the last 8 teams out. So not a good loss for Stanford, but USC is back on track. They have reached 20 wins as USC, USC is one of 2 teams that in the Pac-12 that have reached 20 wins overall. The other team was Colorado, which they managed to get the victory over Arizona State yesterday, which is no surprise just because Arizona State hasn't really been at full strength this season, considering sickness and COVID and injuries. Can't forget about all the injuries. Like, the injuries for Arizona State is so ridiculous that it felt like they were being passed around like Halloween candy or passed around like gravy at the Thanksgiving table. So there's that right there. So, and now here's the scenario for USC and UCLA. So currently in the Pac-12 standings, Oregon leads the Pac-12 standings as they are 13-4 in the conference, while USC is 14-5. Now normally that's considered a tie, but since we're going off of Pac-12 percentage, and since that's how the regular season conference champion is going to be decided, because of all this COVID issues, that is in favor of Oregon. So here's the scenario. If Oregon wins on Sunday, I can't believe Oregon is playing Oregon State on a Sunday and not a Saturday. Like, what the heck? Why does Oregon get the special treatment of playing Oregon State on a Sunday? Like, why Sunday? Why not Saturday? But anyway, here's the thing about Oregon and Oregon State. If Oregon wins, they're champions. It's a simple concept for Oregon. Win and they're in. However, Oregon State has actually been on a sneaky winning streak. They've won 3 in a row, and Oregon State does have some talented players. They actually have some players from Southern California, most of which coming from the Bishop Montgomery area. They have Gianni Hunt. They have Ethan Thompson, both of which won a CIF Southern Section and CIF State Championship with Bishop Montgomery. Gotta give Bishop Montgomery some love. Big shout out to that school and that team. Anyway, so Oregon State does have a sneaky good team, and this could really help Oregon State's chances of getting a first round bye in the Pac-12 championship or the Pac-12 tournament. And that would really help Oregon State's confidence going forward, because Oregon State would currently be the number 5 seed. Now, I don't know what the tiebreaker situation is with Stanford and Oregon State. I'm actually on Oregon State's scores as we speak, as Stanford beat Oregon State one time, and then the second time, I guess they only played one time. Stanford, as they beat Stanford, and Oregon State won the second time. Okay, so I don't know how Oregon State and Stanford are going to decide the tiebreaker. I don't know if it's decided by overall points scored, because if that's the case, then Oregon State has that category locked up. But either way, if Oregon State does win that game against Oregon, then that'll knock Oregon out of the Pac-12 championship regular season contention, and it'll give Oregon State a first-round bye, because for those of you wondering why Arizona isn't in this equation, is because Arizona is not going to be partaking in the Pac-12 tournament and the NCAA tournament because of some sanction violations that they had. So I won't get too much into that, because this isn't about Arizona. This is about USC and UCLA. But but back to Oregon State, a win for them would guarantee them a first-round bye. But if Oregon State loses, then Oregon is the Pac-12 regular season champion. They're the number 1 seed in the tournament, and they're most likely in for the NCAA tournament. So there's that. So what about USC and UCLA, you will ask? Well, let's say Oregon loses. It could happen. Knock on wood. Anyway, so USC and UCLA face each other on Saturday. So that's kind of a little anticlimactic, considering the winner of... I don't even know if Oregon can... I don't know. Can UCLA catch up to Oregon? Because here's the scenario. If UCLA wins and then Oregon loses, UCLA would be 14-5, Oregon would be 13-5, and then USC would be 14-6. So UCLA would be the outright Pac-12 conference champion. But if USC wins and then Oregon loses, then USC is the outright regular season conference champion. And this is just for regular season, but I'm pretty sure whoever wins the regular season championship is most likely going to go to the NCAA tournament. But I could see multiple teams from the Pac-12 going to the NCAA tournament. Oregon's most likely in. USC is definitely in. Colorado for sure is in. UCLA should be in. And I think Oregon State might be in. It all depends on how they do in the Pac-12 tournament and how they do against Oregon, because a win against Oregon could solidify Oregon State in the tournament. But for now, USC, Colorado, UCLA, and Oregon are all pretty much lock-ins for the most part. According to bracketology, Colorado is a projected 5 seed. USC is a projected 6 seed after their losses to Colorado and Utah. And I want to say UCLA is a 9 seed, while Oregon is an 8 seed. So that would be quite interesting. And I did hear the rule that conference teams can face each other in the first round of the NCAA tournament, which if we got to see Oregon and UCLA Part 2, that would be fun. Especially since the two teams were actually supposed to play each other 2 times this season. Unfortunately, we never got Oregon UCLA Part 2 because of COVID, and there wasn't enough time to make up the second game. And also, I bet you if Oregon didn't make up that second game against Arizona, I think that we would have had UCLA Oregon Part 2 in the same week, mind you. So there's that right there. But for now, it's looking like the odds are stacked against USC and UCLA. Obviously, USC and UCLA want to go into the Pac-12 tournament with some confidence, because no matter what happens, Oregon, UCLA, and USC, as well as Colorado, have byes. So that's cool right there. So as for UCLA and USC and their matchup on Saturday, so this matchup's going to take place at, Pauley Pavilion or John Wooden Center. Either way, it's going to take place at UCLA. Here's the thing about UCLA. They have not lost a home game this year. So, that's going to be tricky for USC. Especially given that awful performance on the road against Colorado and Utah in the Rocky Mountains. It's I want to pick USC to win, but at the same time, after that horrendous performance last week, I don't know. And UCLA is going to come with fire, considering they've dropped 2 in a row. They lost both 2 games that they most likely should have won, and both of which they allowed big runs in the second half, which eventually put the game away. So it's tough. I mean, this is USC's best chance to possibly win the Pac-12 regular season championship. But at the same time, UCLA has not lost at home, and they're also hungry to get back into the W column. So I'm going to, I hate to say this, but I got to go with my gut and my heart and say USC wins. It's going to be close, though. It's certainly not going to be a blowout like the first time. Like, I couldn't believe USC. Like, there's no way UCLA should ever get blown out by USC. Like, USC UCLA is always a tight fight to the finish. And this match is going to be, or not match, this game is going to prove no different. Especially with a lot on the line for both these teams. Especially since it could actually help either or team. Like, if UCLA wins, then I could see them being projected as a 8 or 7 seed. And then with a USC loss, that could move USC down to a 7 seed, if not 8 seed at worst. Which, if USC was an 8 seed, that would be a nightmare for them, considering a possible upset on the road against the number 1 seed. Not really happening. But it is possible with the Mobley brothers and a few others as well. So I just don't think it's actually possible. So we'll see if the Trojans can get her done. But USC has to take care of their job first. They have to win against UCLA, and then they can look ahead to Sunday against Oregon State and Oregon. So we'll see. I just think it's a little unfair that USC got to play 20 of its games while Oregon got to play only 18, and Oregon's going to get a chance to win the Pac-12 championship. But it is what it is. Like, no one predicted COVID would happen, and it's not their fault. So my only question is this. What if Oregon State and Oregon gets canceled? Like, what happens then? They certainly can't make it up on Monday, because that would be unfair for both it would be both unfair for Oregon State and Oregon, because that would give them less time to rest and practice for the Pac-12 tournament, and that would put them at a major disadvantage. So if it somehow gets canceled due to a, heaven forbid, a COVID outbreak or something along those lines, then, God, I can only imagine what happens. Like, they'd still most likely factor in win percentage and all that. So we'll see. We shall see. But looking at USC's Pac-12 conference schedule, and their conference schedule, or their Pac-12 win percentage, even if Oregon State got canceled and then USC beat UCLA, I don't think that would give them a higher percentage, because they'd be 15-5, which would be a win percentage of 75%, while Oregon State has a win percentage of 76.5%. So, unfortunately, Oregon would still be the champion, which would mean that USC got screwed against Oregon by not 1, but 2 sports. And what's funny is that USC actually beat Oregon. They pretty much thumped them. So, oh, USC, if only you didn't lose to Utah. If only you didn't lose to Oregon State. By 2, by the way. I mean, I'll give USC the benefit of the doubt that Colorado is good, and then Arizona is a legendary program, and then Colorado was good the second time because it was basically their last week at Colorado or Boulder. But I will also say this about USC. This is why you can never take it easy. And I kind of fear that USC looked ahead when it came to that Utah game. They looked ahead to being back home at warm, comfy Galen Center, and now USC is paying the price. So, and I don't really like banking on teams to beat other teams, especially if you're a USC or UCLA fan. But in this case, we need Oregon State to win. So, Beavers, y'all better get the job done on Sunday. And no matter who wins between USC or UCLA, if Oregon does beat Oregon State, then it's going to be heartbreaking. So there's that. All right, that's enough chatter about the Pac-12 men's basketball school. So let's actually talk about the San Diego State men's basketball team, as they beat UNLV, and I want to say the score of that game was 71-62. Either way, they beat him by 9 points, and yeah, it was 71-62. I am proud of myself. Yay. So yeah, San Diego State beat UNLV 71-62 and are the Mountain West Conference champions. Unfortunately for Colorado State, they actually tied for first with Colorado State. However, Colorado State's games against New Mexico, or their game against New Mexico this week, doesn't mean anything considering New Mexico has forfeited the remainder of their games because I think they had a violation of sanctions too. I'm not so sure about New Mexico State, and I don't really care because this isn't the New Mexico State Sports Show. This is the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. So anyway, San Diego State is theoretically the Mountain West Conference regular season champion by a half game. So congratulations to San Diego State on achieving that accomplishment. Even though they lost, it was looking pretty bleak after they lost twice to Utah State, and it also looked pretty bleak after they blew that 27-point lead against Colorado State. But they did it. They're the Mountain West Conference regular season champions. So the Aztecs will get a first round bye, and they'll be finding out who they play in the Mountain West Conference tournament. So good job, San Diego State. You are one of two teams who has won a conference championship in men's or women's basketball. The other, you may ask, that is Cal Baptist women's basketball, which is perfect segue to go into the next topic, being Cal Baptist women's basketball. So, Cal Baptist women's basketball, they are still undefeated, which is awesome. Unfortunately, they are not ranked, which is not awesome. And believe it or not, it's actually perfect segue to go into this game. Cal Baptist has barely beat Seattle tonight, 66-64. Holy guacamole! Cal Baptist barely squeaked that one out. So everyone is wanting to take their best shot at Cal Baptist, and for Cal Baptist, it's really tough for them to stay undefeated. Like for any team, it's tough to stay undefeated in any sport, at any level. Because you could be in the finals of a tournament or a championship, and then you could wind up losing in the last game of the season, or that final game, which could derail your perfect season. So the fact that Cal Baptist women's basketball is still undefeated is so amazing. They are 21-0 after their very, 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 very close one against Seattle. Surprisingly, they had trouble with Seattle. Like, Seattle was 11-11 going into that game. So maybe it was an off shooting night for Cal Baptist. I'm not sure, but either way, Cal Baptist is still undefeated, and that's cool. Unfortunately for Cal Baptist, they are not ranked, and in addition to that, Cal Baptist will not be going to the NCAA tournament, even if they win the WAC tournament, the Western Athletic Conference tournament. And why, do you ask? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because Cal Baptist is still in their new process of being a Division I school. The whole rule of the transition rule is still in effect for them, which is really dumb. I thought they got rid of that rule, which is disappointing. Like, I would have liked to see Cal Baptist in the NCAA tournament, but unfortunately that is not the case, as the transition period is still in effect, and I think Cal Baptist is still 1 year away from being in the NCAA tournament in Division I. So there's that. So yeah, according to SportsIllustrated.com, that Cal Baptist women's basketball actually has a chance to do something they haven't done before in quite a while. Go undefeated and not get invited to the NCAA tournament. So, before we continue, gotta give a shout to Davidson Crooks, who just popped in the chat room. Thank you for joining me. Just talking some college hoops. He says, what's good? And it's actually perfect that Davidson just popped in. So, Cal Baptist women's basketball is undefeated, 21-0, and they're still not going to be in the NCAA tournament because of the whole transition period. I'm just going to be real with you all. I think the transition period needs to be gotten rid of ASAP. Like why? Especially in a pandemic year. why does Cal Baptist women's basketball still have to go with that whole transition period? I get it's still to like separate the women from the girls, but I still think that's dumb. And now Cal Baptist women's basketball is 3 wins away from making history in the weirdest way. If they win out against Seattle tomorrow, and then they win their 2 games in the WAC tournament, because they're going to have a bye to the point where they're going to be able to play in the semifinals of the WAC tournament, and then if they win that, they'll be in the finals of the WAC tournament, and then if they win that, they'll be undefeated. But Cal Baptist women's basketball will have the chance to become only one of few teams to go undefeated but not be invited to the NCAA tournament. And that is quite the unusual accomplishment for not only men's programs, but for women's programs as well. So it's just absolutely ridiculous. As Cal Baptist joins UConn, Louisville, Mississippi State, and NC State to start the year 20-0, which is quite astounding. And then their conference games have been won by an average of 20 points, with the exception of today. So in terms of the NCAA net rankings, Cal Baptist is number 87th, while they are actually number 8 in the most recent College Insider Top 25. So there's that. But like I said, no matter what happens, even if they win the WAC tournament, even if they win by 100 in the WAC tournament championship, they will not be invited to the NCAA tournament. And they didn't do anything wrong, because they're still in the third year of the 4-year transition period from Division II to Division I. Which, again, I still think it's a dumb thing. I really think they need to get rid of that transition period rule. Just especially in a year such as this. Like, come on now. And even the coach, Jared Olson, says that the NCAA needs to look at that. So, there's that. And instead, the money is going to be distributed to the rest of the conference. Which makes me wonder one thing. If Cal Baptist does win the WAC tournament, who is the representative from the WAC? Is it the runner-up? I don't know, but it's just dumb. I really, really think this whole transition period is dumb. They need to get rid of it once and for all. And even Pierre Moss said on Twitter, shout out to Pierre Moss of iSports Radio and Wellington Sports Radio, said on Twitter that the rule needs to be gotten rid of or abolished or whatever. So it really does suck for Cal Baptist women's basketball, but they will be making history in terms of winning not making the NCAA tournament and finishing undefeated. So I think they'll be joining UConn and a few others. And now they're 3 wins away from the record-setting season. And as Cal Baptist is going to be the number 1 seed, and they, like I said, they've earned a spot in the semifinals. And then if they actually do accomplish that feat, it's going to be really cool. And I don't know when the last time a team went undefeated on the men's or women's side, and then they missed the NCAA, and then they weren't invited to the NCAA tournament because of reasons. But I'm pretty sure Cal Baptist could be the first one. At least they're making history, though. But I still think the whole rule should be gotten rid of. Like, it's just bad. And Davidson Crooks said, I would think so. So, yeah. I think they should just let him play, or at least invite him to the NIT. Like, no, the NIT is basically the same thing as a postseason. But still, I just don't understand anymore. But to be undefeated at this point of the season is still quite amazing. So I hope Cal Baptist does accomplish this. But one thing I hope Cal Baptist, the whole school that Cal Baptist doesn't do, is raise a banner. If they get any idea, if they give the same idea that UCF's football team had or the UCF athletic department had of raising a banner after they went undefeated and they didn't get invited to the whole championship thing, I will raise heck. And yes, I'm going to say heck. I will raise heck if Cal Baptist gets the idea of raising a championship banner despite not winning a championship. Please, 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 Cal Baptist, don't do it. I'm sure they won't, though. I'm sure Cal Baptist is not going to be like UCF, where they raised a championship banner after UCF went undefeated, and they were left out of the top 4 of the FBS National Championship semifinals and whatnot. So, I just want the girls at Cal Baptist to just have fun and to send their seniors off on like the biggest, most positive note possible. Because Cal Baptist has been challenged as of late. They got challenged by Grand Canyon a couple weeks ago as they played them. They had to beat them in overtime. They were challenged by Seattle today. And then they were also challenged by UC San Diego back in the early parts of the non-conference season, as UC San Diego actually led by 8, and then the game got called because of a late positive test, which forced the game to be postponed, which eventually forced the game to be canceled. I want to say it got canceled, but I'm not entirely sure. But either way, Cal Baptist is on its way to making history, which it's weird history, but it's still cool history, and I'm really happy for Cal Baptist. So there's that right there. And yeah, I guess the game against UC San Diego eventually got canceled just because I'm not seeing it on Cal Baptist's schedule. Like even San Diego State played Cal Baptist tough, so that's cool. UC Riverside played them tough. Looking at their schedule, some teams played them tough. So this hasn't been a cakewalk schedule for Cal Baptist. Like some of these teams have played them tough. Utah Valley played them tough. Like I said, Grand Canyon played them tough. The list goes on and on. So there's that right there, and that's pretty much my little spiel on Grand Canyon, or not Grand Canyon. Cal Baptist women's basketball. I think they deserve an actual postseason. I don't even care if it's the NIT or the CIT. Like, give them a postseason. Like, I know it would be great for them to just go out with a blaze of glory, being undefeated, but give them an actual postseason. Don't make them be like Squidward looking outside where he's seeing SpongeBob and Patrick having fun. Yeah, for those of you that know that meme, then yeah. But that's pretty much going to do it in regards to that little topic, and I hope Cal Baptist does get the job done. So, let's jump on in. Let's close the book on NCAA basketball for a while, or college basketball for a while, and let's jump right into some actual news that happened in the high school sports world in Southern California. That high school sports are actually back up and running, as schools from Southern California are able to play outdoor sports such as water polo, tennis, cross country, even football is going to be starting up pretty soon, which is awesome. And it only took them like almost the entire school year to the point where the 1-year anniversary of COVID-19 happened. So I know I didn't sound enthused on that last part, but what can you do? At least the seniors are actually getting some sort of season. Some schools are actually opting out because they don't want to risk it, but it's good that some of these kids and the coaches are going to be getting out. And Davidson Crook says good for those kids. Yeah, especially for the seniors, considering some of the seniors had to even opt out to like enroll early in colleges. So the fact that we are getting high school sports now is amazing. And soon we'll be getting high school sports in Southern California in terms of indoor sports as well, as basketball, indoor volleyball, wrestling and any other indoor sport that I might have missed is going to get the green light to possibly come back. It still may require like NCAA on the spot testing, and then it also may require the tier systems to like get to like orange or yellow depending on which tier it is. But if it doesn't happen for the sport of volleyball, if it doesn't happen for high school volleyball, then they're just going to play on the beach. Because I did just see in an article that a couple of schools near my neck of the woods are utilizing the beach courts to play 6v6 volleyball. So, which is creative, and I approve of that. So, enough volleyball chatter, because we save the volleyball chatter for set point. So, and no one wants to hear talk about volleyball for Friday instead of Monday/Tuesday. So it is good to hear that the kids are going to be getting sports, because I can only imagine that they've been chomping at the bits. Unfortunately, for some of the sports like cross country, football, water polo, and I guess field hockey, even though that's not really a sanctioned sport in Southern California, there won't be any like championship games. There won't be playoffs, and there won't be championship games, which is a bummer, but they would have had to get everything approved by January, which, again, at least the kids are getting their senior year, and they're not going to be like, just sitting at home, just wondering if we're going to get a season or not. Davidson says, I'll be honest, sports here in Bama has been going strong. Yes, some schools shut down programs a couple weeks ago, but the sports have pushed forward. That's amazing. And good for Bama. Good for all these other sports that are getting everything done, and they're just not like they're like letting the kids play. Because I don't want to sound like too much of an advocate, but the kids only get one, especially for the seniors, they only get one senior year per year. After their senior year, that's it. You're gone. Welcome to the real world. And they won't get a prom, they won't get a winter formal, they won't get any of that stuff. But at least schools from like Alabama and Utah and everywhere else that's having like all these events are able to get all these events happening, and as well as for sports. So there's that. So I just wanted to get that news out of there, just because it is local news in Southern California, and it is good news. So good for all of the athletic directors, good for everyone that has been helping slow the curve or stop the curve or flatten the curve. And just mind your P's and Q's if you're going to these sporting events, people. Don't ruin it for anyone, please. Okay, but that's enough about the high school sports scene in Southern California. Let's go to the NBA. So, NBA action. So, the Lakers and the Clippers have finally seen the light to the NBA All-Star break, which is a major relief. Like, I thought they were never going to get to the NBA All-Star break, but they finally did, and then they'll be able to rest their weary bones. So, as for the Clippers, they've kind of been up and down, surprisingly. They're entering their break on a 3-game losing streak. They're entering their All-Star break on a 3-game losing streak, and they've lost 4 out of 5 games, which is quite surprising, if you ask me. So the Celtics just recently lost to the Washington Wizards 119-117. Yeah, Clippers fans, not so fun when you're on the losing end to that Washington team. At least I didn't see a whole lot of Laker bashing or any of that stuff. But anyway, Clippers lost to the Wizards 119-117 because Russell Westbrook is a beast. Shout out to him, being a former UCLA product. And I think it was also a former Taft product. I know he played ball in Southern California, but I'd have to look it up. But anyway, Wizards beat the Clippers 119-117. On Tuesday, this kind of surprised me. The Boston Celtics beat the Clippers 117-112. Though Kawhi Leonard was a late scratch due to back spasms. And then the game against the Wizards, Paul George was a late scratch due to dizziness, which is kind of unfortunate, but It is what it is. And either way, the Clippers lost that game, which I'm not too surprised, but they lost to the Celtics twice, which the Celtics aren't really doing that great. But the Celtics kind of need to salvage wins because this is probably one of the worst times I've seen the Boston Celtics. And as a Lakers fan, it's kind of concerning. For them, obviously. For the Lakers, it's no big deal for us. Even though I picked the Celtics to go to the Eastern Conference Finals before everything started. So there's that. And then this past Sunday, the Clippers lost to the Milwaukee Bucks 105-100. It's always tough beating the Bucks at the Bradley Center or whatever the Bucks play at is called. I will always refer to all these stadiums or gymnasiums as their old name. So I will refer to the Bucks' stadium as the Bradley Center. So there's that. And then last Friday, the Clippers trounced the Grizzlies 119-99. A day after they lost to the Grizzlies 122-94, where I pretty much went on that little mini tirade rant of how everyone makes a huge deal of the Lakers' losses, but they make no big deal of the Clippers' losses. So there's that. So now let's go on to the Lakers, and that's a perfect segue to go on to the Lakers, as they're also going to be entering the NBA All-Star break on a losing streak, except their losing streak is only at 2, which isn't too terrible considering they've had a lot of players out due to injury. Their most recent game, they lost to the Sacramento Kings 123-120. In that game, the Lakers did not have Anthony Davis, Alex Caruso, LeBron James, who actually was nursing a ankle injury, and I forget who else was out. Kuzma played, Harrell played, Schroeder played. Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol was also out due to health and safety concerns, and Alex Caruso was out due to neck spasms, and then AD's still out, and then LeBron was out due to rest / his ankle. So that really sucks. And the Lakers previously lost to the Phoenix Suns 114-104. Again, it's not too surprising just because the Suns are a good team, but I would have liked to see the Lakers pull out that win. But it's tough to beat a talented Suns team when you're missing almost all of your team. Well, not all of your team, but most of your team. And then LeBron was battling an ankle injury as well, so we'll see what the Lakers can do. But the one game that actually impressed me was their win over the Golden State Warriors. They stomped on them 117-91 this past Sunday. So that one really impressed me just because the Warriors kind of made them. They embarrassed them not in terms of score, but in terms of coming from behind and getting the dub. So there's that right there. That was one of their more impressive wins without Anthony Davis. And then last Friday, the Lakers beat the Portland Trailblazers 102-93, which I'll be honest, I expected that because the Lakers had a 4-game losing streak last year. And then what happened was the Lakers played the Trailblazers, and guess who won? The Lakers. Fast forward to this year, at this time, or at that time, and then the Lakers snapped that losing streak courtesy of a win against Portland. So I told y'all should listen to me more, but no one wants to listen to you, boy. Anyway, so the Lakers, who enter the All-Star break on a 2-game losing streak, are number 3 in the Pacific Conference, while the Clippers are ranked number 4, and the Clippers and Lakers are the 4th and 3rd seed in the Western Conference. The number 2 seed, surprisingly, is the Phoenix Suns, which have been on a tear lately. I can't believe that's actually been a thing. They've won their past 4 games, and in their last 10, they are 8-2, which is quite surprising. Though they have played 2 fewer games than the Lakers, so there's that. The team that has the best record in the Western Conference and in the NBA is still the Utah Jazz, 27-9. They have lost 2 in a row, but it's not too big of a deal for them. So I expect the Lakers to actually get it together. I have been hearing rumors that the Lakers could be buying out Blake Griffin, or could be signing Blake Griffin after his contract was bought out by the Brooklyn Nets. But it's looking, or I'm sorry, not the Brooklyn Nets, the Detroit Pistons, but it's looking like the Brooklyn Nets are going to be signing Blake Griffin, the former Los Angeles Clipper. Now, I wouldn't mind if the Lakers got Blake Griffin, but their biggest concern is they need Anthony Davis, and they need everybody on board. Only then will the Lakers repeat as NBA champs. But at least the Lakers get some time to rest, and All-Star Weekend is basically going to be everything. Everything's going to be on Sunday, which means LeBron and his team will be able to play on Sunday, and the dunk contest and skills challenge will also be there. Will be there as well. So everything's going to get crammed into one solid Sunday, which is new, but it's unique. At least it doesn't drag out the whole All-Star game, but or whole All-Star weekend. But I will also say this: I wish the All-Star game or All-Star weekend just wouldn't happen this year. It's not going to have fans. It's not. Its ratings are going to plummet. Like, I actually see myself watching Oregon State versus Oregon instead of watching the All-Star game, and that's kind of sad for me. But I think Oregon State and Oregon has a lot more importance than the All-Star game, especially for USC and UCLA purposes. So I know I'm probably just being a stinker, but I think it would just be safe for all of the players, because what if someone gets COVID or has COVID symptoms and is forced to quarantine and has to miss games? Like, what happens then? And it's being played in Atlanta. Like, next thing you know, people are going to go to Magic City to try some lemon pepper wings with Lou Williams. Yeah, I had to make that reference. Lemon pepper Lou. But I'm just not going to be too fully interested in the NBA All-Star weekend. I will have interest in the dunk contest and the skills challenge and maybe the three-point shootout. But the All-Star game, I'm not going to have too much of a focus on that, especially since USC or UCLA could be winning the Pac-12 on Sunday. But if Oregon and Oregon State or Oregon State are like up on one another, then I'll probably just turn off that game. But I expect Oregon State and Oregon to be a fight to the finish. So there's that right there. So that's basically your little NBA talk. And I'm glad the Lakers and Clippers are getting some sort of rest, because it gives them time to heal, especially the Lakers. The Lakers definitely need time to heal, since they only got 2 months of rest after they won their 17th championship. So that's cool stuff right there. So that's pretty much all your NBA talk. Let's jump into some hockey. Then we'll go into a little break. So this is the tale of two teams between the Kings and the Ducks. So the Kings, remember when I said the Kings were on fire and they have won 6 in a row? I think that fire might have been put out, as now the Kings have lost 3 in a row. They lost to the Wild last Friday. They lost to the Wild in overtime, 4-3, and then they most recently lost to the Arizona Coyotes 3-2 on Wednesday. Despite this, the Kings have now dropped all the way down to the third worst team in the West Division. So it's the top 4 teams that make the playoffs from each division. And while the Kings are only 3 games back of the Wild, it does not help that they're losing to the Coyotes and the Wild. Because last week when I talked about the Kings, they were the number 3 team from the West. And I was singing praises of them. This time, they're now the 3rd worst team in the conference. And they have yet to cross 10-plus wins. Gosh dang it, Kings. Anyway, so looking at the Kings' schedule, tonight they play the St. Louis Blues right now. So good stuff. And then, looking back on the Kings' schedule, the Kings play the Blues tomorrow. And then they play the Ducks on Monday and Wednesday, and then they play the Colorado Avalanche on Friday at Colorado. And then they also play the Colorado Avalanche again next Sunday as well. The game against the Ducks is going to be at the Honda Center. I will still refer to it as Arrowhead Pond, but it is what it is. So, speaking of the Ducks, that's good segue to go into the Ducks. Oh my god, the Ducks have struggled tenfold. I forget how many games the Ducks have lost in a row. They've lost 8 in a row. I'm now seeing it on the ESPN SportsCenter app. They have lost 8 in a row. 8. And most of those games have been by 1 goal. They're basically the Chargers of the NHL. Yeah, and that's not really the greatest thing. So, this past Wednesday, the Ducks lost to the Blues 3-2. And then this past Monday, they lost to the Blues 5-4. And then last Saturday, they lost to the Golden Knights 3-2 in overtime. And it's just been such a bad break for the Ducks, because they're losing all these one-score games. Like looking at their losing streak, 6 of their 8 losses have come by 1 score. That is how disappointing the Ducks have been this year. And I want to say that but I guess 2 of their losses have come via shootout / overtime. So this is not looking too good for the Ducks. At least when the Kings were bad, it was the Kings and the Ducks being bad. But if it's going to be the Kings, if there's going to be one team that's going to make it to the playoffs, it's most likely going to be the Kings. Because, honestly, the Ducks aren't cutting it. So, there's that regarding the Ducks. And as for the Ducks, their next game is tonight, which is going to be happening right now against the Colorado Avalanche. Saturday they play the Avalanche. Monday and Wednesday they play the Kings at home, and then next Friday and Saturday they play the San Jose Sharks at the Honda Center. So after the little 2-game roadie against the Colorado Avalanche, they play the Kings and the Sharks next week, and that should be good times. And hopefully the Ducks can turn it around, because if not, then it's another year out of the NHL playoffs. So, come on, Ducks, do better. But on that note, that's going to be it for the NHL talk, and we're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be talking some college sports, and then we're also going to be talking about the release of the UCLA, USC, and San Diego State football schedules for 2021. It's sure to be a swell time. You're listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's going on, football fans? This is me, your boy Larry B, inviting you to join myself, Colin Reynolds, Mike Pat, and John Felipe for one of the most electrifying football shows you have ever heard. 3 and Out, right here at IE Sports Radio. Recap of the week before, a preview of what's to come, and of course, 3 hardcore head-to-head prime-time face-offs each week. You don't want to miss it. College football, and do you want to hear a college football show dedicated to all that is college football, including junior college and the CCCAA and the NJCAA, the NAIA, and the NCAA, including Division III, Division II, Division I AA in the FCS, and Division I Single A in the FBS? Well then, look no further. Join myself, Larry B, and my colleagues, Mr. H-Town Blake Henley, and Mr. Christian Espinoza, each week during the college football season for the latest in college football on 3 and Out College Edition, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we are back to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. You can definitely check out all of IE Sports Radio's amazing shows on many platforms such as YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, TuneIn. The list goes on and on. So definitely do give us all a listen, and definitely give IE Sports Radio a follow on our many platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube, and like us on Apple Podcasts, and leave us a positive review, or 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and a positive review on Facebook. So there's that. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at IE Sports Radio, and you can also go to Facebook and put in the search bar IE, then the word sports, and the word radio, and then if you see a background that says IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports in white letters with a black background, that's us. So there's that right there, and definitely do check out our 3 sponsors, Legacy Financial, Mama's Always Right Media, and the Sports Rundown. So thank you to those 3 sponsors once again for being the official sponsor of IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. And now let's jump on in to the second part of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, as we'll be talking some college football. Yes, you thought that was over down, didn't you? No, it isn't, as we've got some college football action for you. We'll soon be having college football from San Diego and Cal Poly and any of those other FCS schools, so fun times. But as for the FBS schools, San Diego State, UCLA, and USC have all released their 2021 schedule. Get hyped, people. So yeah, it is really going to be awesome to see the Aztecs, the Bruins, and the Trojans take the field. And I'm looking forward to seeing those teams next season. So let's go one by one with all these schedules. So we'll start off with San Diego State, just because, no offense to them, they're not the Power 5 school, but we still have love for them. They're still Southern California. We love them. So anyway, San Diego State's schedule for the 2021 season will be starting on September 4th. They will open up their season at home against New Mexico State. Then on September 11th, they will be traveling to Arizona to play the Wildcats of Arizona. That's going to be fun, but maybe fun for San Diego State if they can get it together. And then on September 18th, they play Utah, which is another Pac-12 school. Then, after their bye week, they will have a game against New Mexico. And then on October 16th, they will be playing at San Jose State in a little rematch after the Aztecs got beaten by the Spartans. And then the following week, October 23rd, they are going to travel to Colorado to face Air Force. And then on October 30th, San Diego State will be traveling back to San Diego to face Fresno State, the Bulldogs. And then on November 6th, they'll be going to the Big Island to face Hawaii. And then on November 13th, they'll be traveling to the City That Never Sleeps, or the City of Lights, whatever you want to call it, to face Nevada. And then, actually no, they'll be going back to San Diego to face Nevada. Then on November 20th, they'll be facing UNLV. Then they'll be traveling to Nevada to face UNLV. And then to close out the regular season, San Diego State plays Boise State at San Diego to finish its season. And then December 4th is the Mountain West Championship. So that's cool. That's some cool stuff right there. So looking at San Diego State's schedule, I feel they can actually do some damage. Utah's going to be the tough one, and then depending on who San Jose State has, and Boise State has, and Nevada has, could also prove to be rather tricky. But I can see the Spartans, or not the Spartans, the Aztecs going in their 12 games 9-3 at worst. It's tough for me to speculate San Diego State's schedule, but I'll say 11-1 at best. I think 11-1 sounds reasonable. They do have a favorable schedule for the most part. I'm not calling their schedule light, and I'm not trying to say that they're going to beat everyone down, but they have some legit opponents. Like Boise State's always good. Utah is always a legit team. I'm surprised they're not playing BYU again, but it is what it is, so there's that. And then you never know with Nevada and San Jose State, because those two teams were really good, and then they kind of fell apart. Well, no, it's not San Jose State. San Jose State was just strong the rest of the way until their bowl game. That's when they fell apart. So we'll see how it goes for San Diego State. But I got them going 11-1 at best, 9-3 at worst. So there we go in regards to San Diego State's football schedule. So now let's go to UCLA. So UCLA will be playing 12 games, and they will open up their season at home against Hawaii, or Hawaii. I don't know why I call it Hawaii. That one's going to be on August 28th. And then on September 24th, they will stay at home against LSU. And then they get their bye week after they face LSU quite early in the season, as they'll be playing Fresno State at the Rose Bowl on September 18th. Then on September 25th, UCLA will be playing at Stanford at the Farm, so that'll be a fun little matchup, as the Bruins lost to the Cardinal in overtime. And then on October 2nd, UCLA will be playing Arizona State. Now that's going to be a tricky yet fun matchup for the Bruins and the Sun Devils. And then on October 9th, UCLA will be playing Arizona. And then on October 16th, UCLA will be playing at Washington. October 23rd, UCLA will be playing Oregon. October 30th, UCLA will be playing at Utah. November 13th, which I'm surprised they get 2 byes. So UCLA gets 2 byes? Wow. So UCLA is going to get 2 byes. They get a week 2 bye, or I'm sorry, a week 3 bye, a bye after their second week, and then they get a bye after week 9. So that's basically going to be their week 10 bye. So UCLA will be playing Colorado at UCLA, or the Rose Bowl, and then UCLA will be playing USC at the Coliseum on November 20th, and then I also should mention this: UCLA will be playing Colorado on November 13th, and then UCLA will be wrapping up their regular season at home against Cal in a little NorCal versus SoCal action. So here's my thing about UCLA's schedule: it looks rather challenging on paper. You look at some of their games; it's quite the challenge. Like LSU, even though they did go through quite the rebuild, they still have Coach Ed Orgeron. The should have been USC coach. Well, unfortunately, that is not the case. And then Arizona State's going to be pretty good. Washington is always good. Oregon is always up there. Utah is slated to be good. Colorado always has a good team, pretty good team. And then USC is USC. So, looking at this schedule, I don't want to say this about UCLA, but I think UCLA goes, at worst, they go 5-7, and then at best, I'll say UCLA goes. I'll say they go 8-4 at best. I'm not trying to be a hater toward UCLA, or I'm not trying to be a USC homer, but UCLA, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think they can hang with the likes of Oregon and Oregon and Washington. And before people say, "Oh, this guy's a hater. He doesn't like UCLA." No, I am not a hater. I think UCLA has. I think they have a good, solid team, and then they also returned Demetric Felton and whatnot. So I think the Bruins have a good foundation, and Chip Kelly's done a good job for the Bruins. But honestly, I just don't see them. I don't see them like winning 10 or so games. But I could be wrong. Like, you never know what happens with UCLA and whatnot. So I could see some potential, maybe 6-6 at the average, but that's about it. So anyway, now let's go to USC's schedule. The one that I was looking forward to. So USC is going to kick off its schedule at home against San Jose State in the battle of SoCal versus NorCal, which is cool. And then also, after that, USC will be staying at the Coliseum to face Stanford at the Coliseum as well. So it's a back-to-back Northern California opponents. USC is going to play San Jose State on September 4th, while they play Stanford on September 11th. Then their first road game is going to be September 18th against Washington State. And then after that, USC returns home on September 25th to face Oregon State. And then after that game, USC travels to Boulder, Colorado to face Colorado on October 2nd. Then on October 9th, USC returns home to face Utah. Then USC gets their bye, their Week 7 bye. They get a bye on Week 7. If not, that's their second bye, considering they're not playing in August. So USC resumes play in South Bend, Indianapolis, as USC will be playing at Notre Dame for a chance to reclaim the prize. I forget what it's called. Is it called the Schlack or the Schlack or the Schley? Either way, USC will be playing Notre Dame at Notre Dame. Then USC returns home to face Arizona on October 30th. They'll be playing Notre Dame on October 23rd. And then USC will be traveling to the desert in Arizona to face Arizona State. They'll be playing them on November 6th. And then USC will stay on the road, but this time they'll be in Northern California to face Cal on November 13th. And then USC returns home for its final two games, the first one being against UCLA on November 20th. And then USC concludes its season at home against BYU on November 27th. So there's that. So looking at USC's schedule, I'm getting a lot of people saying, "Oh, USC is going to go 12-0." Okay, before we all say USC is going to go 12-0 and they're going to go undefeated, everyone has high expectations for the Trojans just because they're going to have some 5-star recruits and they're going to have some good players coming in. But let's also be honest here. It's still USC and Clay Helton is still the head coach. You never know what can happen with USC, so there's that. As we say hello to Marcus Losgreat saying, what up, what up, what up, what up, no! And Marcus is actually just in time because I'm actually talking some USC football as their schedule just got released. So looking at USC's schedule at a glance, I can see USC at least getting 10-plus wins. At the very least, they're going 10-2, if not going 12-0. But I have USC going 11-1. And Marcus says, chill on my boy Helton. Yeah, I'll chill on him, but I still see potential in USC's schedule. But I don't understand why people are saying USC is going to go 12-0, and they're saying this is the easiest schedule USC has had. Like, what are we just going to forget about about Notre Dame? I know they lost quite a bit of players to the NFL draft, but they're still always good. Like, Notre Dame is still Notre Dame. And then Arizona State returns a bunch of their players, such as Jaden Daniels, and they have Herm Edwards, who is still a mastermind in college football. And then also, okay, I don't know about BYU, but I think USC can beat BYU. BYU loses Zach Wilson, and then I don't think BYU is going to be the same team as they were this year. Like, if they actually win X amount of games in a row, or they actually get close to being undefeated, then more power to them. But I could see USC beating BYU. And then UCLA will be quite interesting just because UCLA also has some good incoming talent coming in. And incoming talent coming in. Yeah, that's not repetitive at all, Teran. But UCLA always is a great challenge, and then sometimes. And then Utah is going to be good. The only game that I don't think I'm overly concerned about for USC is Colorado, because USC, ever since Colorado has joined the Pac-12, Colorado has never, ever beaten USC in football. So there's that. So I think USC goes 11-1. I think their one loss is going to be against Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame, playing at Notre Dame is going to be tricky. But if USC can win that game, that would be a big time win. And Marcus says something quite interesting. I think UCLA fires Chip this year. Interesting. And Marcus also says he had high expectations for Chip when he took over UCLA. I don't think he's doing a bad job, but they lost a lot of one-possession games. So, and then some of those games it looked like UCLA could have won. Like the Oregon game, that late pick six came back to haunt them. The big first down to Tyler Vaughns from Keaton Slovis really hurt the Bruins. The early season loss to Colorado, being down 28 early to Colorado, also hurt them. And yeah, and Marcus also says Notre Dame is one level higher than USC. We lose that game. Facts. I just don't think USC is ready, and it's on the road, so if they allow fans if everyone saw the Notre Dame Clemson game, I'm sure they'll be allowing fans at that game. Ooh, that's not going to be fun for USC, especially since we don't know if USC is going to be having fans at their game. So there's that. And then, but other than that, I think USC can make the Pac-12 tournament again, depending on who they face. The only concern is who are they going to face? Like Oregon lost their quarterback because he transferred, And then Washington lost one of their quarterbacks because he transferred. It's basically just a shuffling of quarterbacks in the Pac-12 minus USC and UCLA and then maybe a few other schools. But I could see USC beating San Jose State. San Jose State's not going to have that same year. No offense, NorCal. Like, I don't want NorCal fans to say, "Oh, this guy's a hater. He's just favoring USC." But I can see USC beating San Jose State. Stanford, they should beat somewhat easily. Washington State, I don't see how they'll lose to them. Oregon State, yeah, I could see them beating Oregon State. Colorado, they don't have too much trouble. Utah is going to be tricky because I think Utah will be much better. And Marcus says if USC loses to San Jose State, I'm on the Fire Helton bus. Yes, but they're not going to lose to San Jose State. I'm driving it. I'm driving it at that point. Oh, that made my day. Honestly, that's good. Matter of fact. My boy Marcus is going to get that Kawhi Leonard laugh. So, yeah. Yeah. But, yeah, I don't see USC losing to San Jose State, nor Stanford. Like, I don't even know who Stanford returns at quarterback. Like, that's just how big of a merry-go-round in terms of quarterbacks is happening. And then Oregon State lost their star running back to graduation. Colorado, I don't think will imitate their same success. Utah, I think USC can squeak out a victory at home because when they play Utah at the Coliseum, they always seem to pull it out toward the end. Like, no matter what happens. Like, if USC was able to win at Utah, they could certainly win at the Coliseum against Utah. Albeit Utah had some unusual happenings go on, but whatever. Notre Dame is the only loss, as Marcus and I established. Arizona, they need to put a whooping on Arizona. I'm sick of seeing USC keep their competition in the game for all until the late quarter. So I want USC to put a whooping on Arizona. Sorry, Arizona fans. Arizona State will be a tricky matchup, but I think USC squeaks out a win. I think USC's defense is going to be so much better, and especially with Corey Foreman coming. Woo! Cal, I know Cal's quarterback Chase Garbers graduates unless he gets another redshirt season, but I'm sure USC is not going to have another blunder against Cal. And by blunder, I mean like a couple of years ago. Or was it 3? I think it was 3 years ago. Not a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, USC stomped on Cal. And then I think USC has a better chance against UCLA. And then BYU is not the same BYU team, so I think USC goes 11-1 at worst, 10-2 at best. So that's my little spiel on USC. Like, anything short of double-digit wins is a major slap to the face and a major disappointment. So there's that right there, in my opinion. So there we go. So that's going to do it for college football talk. Now, before I get into the other miscellaneous college sports that have happened, I'm just going to say this. So next week, I will be moving the SoCal Supreme Sports Show to 4 p.m. Pacific time. I mean, I'll be going on right after Andrew Hagenbaugh's show, The State of Ohio Sports. So basically, it's just going to be my boy Andrew and I going back to back, except Andrew won't be on next week, so there's that. But just because I'm starting to get a little bit more busier, and honestly, I don't think anyone wants to hear me babble on about how the Big West schools are doing. Unless they really want to. But I'm going to leave out the miscellaneous sports recap going forward until like the season reaches its climax. Like, One miscellaneous sport that I'll be talking about next week is water polo, and USC and UCLA are basically in their conference tournament this week, and I'll be recapping that. I'll at least recap that, and then basketball season I'll also go in depth in terms of recapping, but I don't need to fully recap the scores of what happened on every sport, especially since some of these sports are actually starting to finish, like swimming and track. Well, I know track and field just got started, but swim and dive is almost done. So there's that. So looking at the SoCal scores from all these colleges that happened, starting with baseball. Last Friday, we had Cal Poly beating USC 2-1, which was a very ugly loss for USC. We had UCLA defeating UC Irvine 4-3. We had LMU beating Utah 7-6. We had San Diego State beating UC San Diego 10-4. We had UC Santa Barbara, the number 7 team in the nation, mind you, beating Pepperdine 7-6. We had San Diego defeating Cal State Fullerton 6-1. We had Cal State Bakersfield losing to Fresno State 13-2, and we had Cal Baptist losing to St. Mary's 5-1. Last Saturday, we had UC Irvine defeating UCLA by a score of a touchdown to a field goal. Yes, I made that wisecrack on Twitter, which had some UC Irvine fans laughing. At least the UCLA fans didn't come after me. Anyway, last Saturday, we also had LMU defeating Utah 9-7, and then Pepperdine and UC Santa Barbara played a doubleheader with the Gauchos taking both games by scores of 9-7 and 5-0. We also had UC San Diego registering their first Division I win as they beat San Diego State 9-3. Good for the Tritons. We also had San Diego defeating Cal State Fullerton again 6-5, and then we also had Cal State Bakersfield losing to Fresno State 9-6. I almost said 6-9. Don't want to go there. And then St. Mary's and Cal Baptist played a doubleheader. Cal Baptist lost both games as they lost to St. Mary's 8-4 and 6-0. Last Sunday, we had USC pulling out a win over Cal Poly, winning 7-6, avoiding the sweep. We also had LMU completing the sweep over Utah, winning 4-1. We had UCLA shutting out UC Irvine 4-0, so no touchdowns or field goals scored for the Anteaters. We had UC Santa Barbara sweeping the 4-game series against Pepperdine, winning the 4th game 12-2. And then San Diego State and UC San Diego had a doubleheader where the Aztecs beat the Tritons 13-6 in Game 1 and 7-5 in Game 2. We also had Cal State Fullerton salvaging a win over San Diego, as the Titans beat the Toreros 5-1. We also had Cal State Bakersfield salvaging a win over Fresno State 9-4, and then Cal Baptist avoided the sweep by beating St. Mary's 8-5. This past Tuesday, we had UCLA stomping on Cal State Fullerton 14-1, and then yesterday we had San Diego defeating UC San Diego 12-4 in 10 innings. Kudos to the Tritons for pushing the Toreros to extra innings. So those were last week's scores in terms of the college baseball scene. Let's go to the softball scene in terms of last week's scores. So last Friday we had Cal Baptist defeating Santa Clara 7-5, and then we had Cal Baptist losing to Cal 5-4. I accidentally put 4-4, which was my bad. The nerve of me. Anyway, we had San Diego State taking on number 5 Washington in a doubleheader. Washington won the first game 6-1, but the little Aztecs pulled out the upset in the second game 4-0. Good job, Lady Aztecs. We also had a doubleheader between UC Santa Barbara and the University of San Diego. The Toreros won both games, winning 5-0 in the first game and 4-3 in the second game. Cal Poly and Boise State had a doubleheader, and both teams split the doubleheader as Cal Poly beat Boise State 2-0 in Game 1, and then Boise State beat Cal Poly in the second game 7-6. Last Saturday, we had Cal defeating Cal Baptist 7-4, or Cal Baptist losing to Cal 7-4. We had Cal Baptist losing to Stanford 5-0, and then we had San Diego State losing to Washington 5-0 as well. We had Santa Barbara beating San Diego 7-3, and then we had LMU defeating UC Riverside 5-0. Cal State Fullerton and Boise State played a doubleheader as Fullerton won the first game and the second game by scores of 2-0 and 3-2, while the latter two games, Long Beach State and Sacramento State and Long Beach State and Fresno State, got canceled due to, I think it was a little COVID protocols within the Long Beach State softball program. So there's that. Last Sunday we had number 10 Oregon upsetting number 1 UCLA 3-1. That one surprised me. I was very surprised that UCLA lost that one. That game was actually at Arizona State, so cool. Anyway, we had Cal State Fullerton sweeping the series against Boise State 4-1. We had Washington defeating San Diego, losing to Washington 5-0. And those were all of last Sunday's games. Last Monday, we had UCLA getting revenge on Oregon, defeating them 9-3. And then we also had UCLA edging Utah 6-5. On Wednesday, we had UCLA stomping on Cal State Fullerton 9-1. And then yesterday, we had a doubleheader between San Diego and Long Beach State. The Toreros beat the Lady Dirtbags. I'll just call them the Beach. The Toreros beat the Beach in Game 1 4-0 as they actually tossed a one-hitter, so that's some good stuff. And then in Game 2, the Toreros beat Long Beach again, winning the second game 3-2 off of a walk-off for the Toreros. So that's all of softball of what happened last week in Southern California. In terms of women's lacrosse, because USC and San Diego State have Division I lacrosse programs, USC lost to Boston College 14-8 last Friday, and then last Sunday we had San Diego State pulling out a tight victory over Cal, winning 12-11. So there are your women's lacrosse scores from last week. In terms of men's water polo, it was quite the quiet week as everyone had a bye, but Pepperdine was off and running as last Saturday we had Pepperdine defeating Air Force 22-12. It looks like a nice little football score right there. And then on the same day, Pepperdine defeated Loyola Marymount in the PCH Cup battle, winning 14-8. Looks like another nice little football score right there. So this week, like I said, there are conference tournaments happening with USC, UCLA, LMU, Pepperdine, and Cal Baptist. But all of them are in different conferences except for LMU and Pepperdine. They're in the same conference, and USC and UCLA, which are in the same conference. So those are all of your men's water polo updates. In terms of women's water polo, we had last Friday we had UCLA defeating UC Irvine 13-9. We had a doubleheader between Arizona State and USC. USC won both games, winning the first one 16-8 on Friday in Game 1, and then on Saturday, USC squeaked by the Sun Devils 6-5. Going back to the other Saturday games that happened, we had UC San Diego beating Cal Baptist in both games in the doubleheader. They won the first game 15-7, and then UC San Diego won the second game against Cal Baptist 16-7. So there's that. Also, USC played a two-game series against Michigan. USC won the first game 10-6 against the Wolverines. And then on Sunday, USC beat the Wolverines by a score of 13-7 on Sunday. Both games were at ASU, by the way. UC Santa Barbara won their doubleheader last Saturday against San Diego State. They won in close fashion in both games as the Gauchos beat the Aztecs 10-9 in Game 1 and 5-4 in Game 2. So that's all of your women's water polo scores right there in terms of Southern California. Going to men's soccer, last week we had UCLA UCLA losing to Oregon State 2-1. That feels kind of weird, me saying Oregon State beat UCLA in a sport. No offense, Oregon State fans. I'm just saying. Also, last Saturday, we had San Diego State losing to Stanford in a non-conference game, 1-0. Last Sunday, we had San Diego defeating Pacific 2-1, and then we had Loyola Marymount clapping Santa Clara 3-0. Then we also had Cal Baptist defeating Houston Baptist 2-1. So those were all of last week's men's soccer scores in terms of Southern California Division I colleges. In terms of women's soccer, we had UCLA defeating Arizona 2-1, and USC surprisingly losing to Arizona State 1-0. That was a major surprise of what happened last Friday. So UCLA salvaged a win while the Trojans unfortunately lost. Last Saturday, we had San Diego defeating LMU in the battle of two SoCal schools 2-0, while Pepperdine edged St. Mary's 1-0, and Cal Baptist lost to Seattle 1-0 as well. But then on Thursday, which was yesterday, Cal Baptist rebounded by dominating Chicago State, beating them by a score of a touchdown to a donut. In other words, 7-0. And in this week, San Diego State women's soccer kicks off Mountain West Conference play, and the Lady Aztecs are slated to finish first in the Mountain West Conference. So good stuff for the Aztecs. College swim and dive, there are no games this week. They're just conference meets. So there's that right there. In terms of women's tennis, last Friday we had San Diego defeating UC San Diego 7-0. We had Pepperdine defeating Oklahoma State in some indoor action 4-0. We had UCLA defeating USC 6-1, rounding up all of last Friday's games. Last Saturday we had Cal Poly defeating Sacramento State 7-0. We had Cal State Fullerton defeating Point Loma 6-1, and we never got a final score between LMU and LSU, which means that it probably did not get played. Anyway, last Sunday we had San Diego State defeating UC Irvine 6-1, and then we had Cal Poly defeating UC Davis in some Big West Conference action 5-2. The game between Cal State Fullerton and Azusa Pacific did not get played, which was on Wednesday, as I guess that game got canceled, but it is what it is. So those are all of your women's tennis scores from last week in terms of the Southern California colleges in Division I. Going to men's tennis, which will wrap up the college roundup. Last Friday, we had a doubleheader between San Diego State and UC San Diego as the Aztecs beat the Tritons both times. They won the first game 4-2, and then they won the second game 5-0, which was all of the games that happened last Friday, as San Diego and Cal never got played. So there's that. Oh, also, USC defeated TCU 4-0, and Pepperdine defeated UNLV 5-2. So that contradicts what I said about those were the only games that happened right there. So anyway, last Saturday we had Cal Poly defeating Santa Clara 5-2, and then we also had UC Santa Barbara defeating LMU 5-2 as well. Last Sunday we had, in a thrilling men's tennis game, we had USC squeaking by UCLA 4-3. That was an amazing men's tennis game. I wish I had been there. I wish I had kept my eyes locked on both on that game, but unfortunately I didn't know about it until later on in the day. But oh well. We also had UC Irvine defeating San Diego State 4-0, and then we also had Pepperdine losing to TCU 4-2. On Tuesday we had Azusa Pacific defeating we had UC Riverside losing to Azusa Pacific 6-1, and we had UCLA trouncing UNLV 6-1 as well. On Wednesday, we had LMU and San Diego being postponed, and then yesterday we had USC and Pepperdine being postponed as that game got moved to today. As for yesterday's games, we also had UC Riverside losing to Fresno Pacific 7-0. So there's that for all the miscellaneous college sports, and the last time I'll be going over that recap unless I go fully in depth on it. So there's that. Now let's finish up the roundup in all of college hoops. So in terms of women's basketball in the Pac-12, they are actually starting their Pac-12 tournament. Unfortunately for USC, well, good news, bad news for USC. The good news is USC women's hoops won a Pac-12 game. That's awesome. Yay! The bad news is USC lost USC lost today, they lost yesterday to Stanford 92-53. Ouch. So there's that right there. Unfortunately, that happened, and the Lady Trojans are out. But they had a great season, kinda. USC at least won a Pac-12 tournament game. They did finish under 500, but you can't cry over spilt milk. Anyway, yesterday we had UCLA defeating Washington 58-46, as the Lady Bruins will be facing Arizona. The number 9 Lady Bruins will be facing Arizona tonight at 8 p.m., meaning we're going to get some Pac-12 After Dark action, which is going to be some fun times. So, and I promise I will never, ever do that again. Anyway, now let's go to the West Coast Conference. The West Coast Conference was won by none other than Gonzaga, which is no one's surprise. Before we continue on, let's say hello to Pierre Moss, as he says, let's get it. Thank you for joining me. Just talking some college hoops action. Just going down a little recap. So before the whole West Coast Conference women's basketball tournament started, San Diego actually opted out of the West Coast Conference tournament because of a COVID outbreak, and they were unable to participate. So San Diego was actually slated to be the number 3 seed, but unfortunately, with them being out, every team got moved up and whatnot, except for Gonzaga and BYU, which were the 2 and 1 seeds, so there's that. So yesterday we had the PCH Cup rubber match between Pepperdine and Loyola, and it didn't disappoint as Loyola Marymount defeated Pepperdine 85-73, ending Pepperdine's season and moving on to the second round. And in the second round today, we had Loyola Marymount knocking off the reigning West Coast Conference tournament champion Portland 74-56. So for being I think they were an 8 or 9 seed and facing the reigning conference champion, Loyola Marymount really proved themselves. So good for the Lady Lions, or the Lionesses, or however it's pronounced. So Loyola Marymount will be facing Santa Clara in the West Coast Conference women's basketball quarterfinals. Going to be tough to beat the Broncos, but I think the Lions can do it, because in the battle of Broncos versus Lions, you know who wins. So there's that right there, and that's going to do it for the women's side of things of the West Coast Conference. Let's jump to some Pac-12, or not some Pac-12, some Big West Conference women's basketball action, as if I can get everything situated. There it is. Yeah, so the Big West Conference is in its final weeks of the men's and women's season. On the women's side, in terms of scores, we had Cal Poly trouncing UC Santa Barbara 76-46. We had UC Irvine beating Long Beach State 79-70. Yikes, not good for Long Beach State. We had Cal State Fullerton squeaking by UC San Diego 60-57. Hey, Cal State Fullerton actually got a win. I'm just kidding. Don't kill me, Titan fans. And then Hawaii and UC Davis aren't a part of the Southern California. So UC Riverside will not be playing this week because Cal State Northridge opted out, so there's that. Tomorrow's games include UC Santa Barbara at Cal Poly in the blue-green rivalry, Long Beach State at UC Irvine in the black and gold, or the black and blue rivalry. We have UC San Diego at Cal State Fullerton, and those are all your Southern California games in terms of the Big West Conference. In terms of the Big West Conference standings, it's looking like UC Davis is going to win the Big West Conference, as they are 8-0 in conference play, and they play Hawaii, which is actually the fourth best team in the conference, but they still need a lot. It's still going to take a lot to win the conference. So UC Davis is 8-0, and they are pretty much headed for the checkered flag in terms of winning the Big West Conference. UC Irvine has a chance to clinch the second seed in the... Matter of fact, I think they actually have clinched the second seed in the up-and-coming Big West Conference tournament, as UC Irvine is 11-3. Long Beach State is 10-7, as it's looking like they'll most likely be the 3rd seed, if I'm not mistaken, unless Hawaii beats Davis both times, and then Long Beach loses tomorrow. Bakersfield is 5th as they are 7-6 in the conference. Cal Poly is 8-7. Santa Barbara is 6-9. UC San Diego is 5-9. UC Riverside is 5-9 as well. And then Cal State Fullerton is 2-13 in conference play. In terms of overall records, UC Irvine is 13-7. Long Beach State is 11-8. Hawaii is 7-6. Bakersfield is 9-8. Cal Poly is 12-9. Santa Barbara is 6-13. UC San Diego is 5-9, UC Riverside is 7-11, and Cal State Fullerton is 3-16. Before I jump from the Big West Conference women's basketball standings, I will say this: gotta give a shout to UC San Diego for being a new program. They've actually registered some decent wins. They beat UC Riverside twice. They beat UC Irvine one time. They beat UC Santa Barbara, and then they also beat Cal Poly, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was Cal Poly in for their first ever Division I win. So I hope the Tritons become something spectacular in the near future, because I would be all for it, because that team has a lot of promise and they are pulling the rope toward them. So there's that right there in terms of NCAA. Well, in terms of the Big West Conference, I forgot, and we still have the San Diego State to recap, as actually their game against Utah State has been canceled. So Utah State, San Diego State has been canceled, as the Aztecs finish the Mountain West Conference regular season with a record of 5-12 in the conference and 7-16, as they'll be going into a daunting Mountain West Conference tournament. So we'll see if the Lady Aztecs can pull out a victory. And then I already talked about how Cal Baptist beat Seattle barely 66-64. There will be no NCAA tournament berth for the Lady Lancers, but they are 3 wins away from finishing undefeated and not going to the NCAA tournament, which would be the most weirdest history out there. So there's that right there. So now let's jump to NCAA men's basketball in terms of let's jump to the West Coast Conference. So the West Coast Conference, we had, in terms of the West Coast Conference tournament, everyone knows that Gonzaga won the regular season tournament. And honestly, no big deal. So in terms of the Southern California teams, we had San Diego pretty much finishing near the bottom, as San Diego lost yesterday to San Francisco 67-51. Today we have Loyola Marymount playing, as they are tied with San Francisco by a score of 31-31. Pepperdine will await one of the winners for the quarterfinals, as I think Pepperdine plays the winner of Loyola Marymount San Francisco. If that's the case, I am all for Loyola Marymount and I'm all for Loyola Marymount versus Pepperdine PCH Cup Part 3. Let's get it. So there's that right there in terms of the West Coast Conference tournament. As I said, San Diego is out. So they are taking a one-way trip to the off-season. So, sorry guys. It just wasn't meant to be. I already talked about how San Diego State men's basketball already won the regular season Mountain West Conference Championship. Now let's jump to the Western Athletic Conference Championship, as Cal Baptist they are playing, but they are down 45-35 to Seattle. Currently, the Lancers are surprisingly in 3rd place in the Western Athletic Conference. They are 5-5. There hasn't really been too many games being played in terms of the conference. There have been some games, but it seems like we're not going to get a full slate of conference games because of COVID and whatnot. So Cal Baptist is surprisingly 3rd in the Western Athletic Conference. They can actually lock up the 3 seed if they can get some dubs, if they can get some wins tonight. So there's that in terms of Cal Baptist. They're having an okay season. They're not having the greatest season. They're not having the worst season. But Cal Baptist is having an okay season. So there is that right there. So now let's jump to the Big West Conference in terms of men's basketball. We had UC San Diego pulling out the victory over Cal State Fullerton, 89-85. We had UC Santa Barbara defeating Cal Poly, 71-57. That Big West Conference race is getting tighter by the day as the Gauchos are closing in on the Big West Conference championship, regular season championship, and whatnot. So, matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually won the thingy-merjig. So, yeah. Anyway, back to the scores. We had UC Riverside edging Cal State Northridge 72-68. We also had UC Irvine squeaking by Long Beach State in overtime, 71-68. Unfortunate loss for Long Beach State, as a lot of... I'll be getting to Long Beach State in a little bit later. So that's pretty much it for the SoCal scores from the Big West Conference. Tomorrow we have UC Riverside at Cal State Northridge, UC Irvine at Long Beach State, Cal State Fullerton at UC San Diego, and Cal Poly at UC Santa Barbara. So before I get into the standings of the Big West Conference, I will also say this about Long Beach State. They've lost a bunch of one-possession losses, and that is what's been hurting them for the most part. Like, they just lost today to UC Irvine in overtime by 3. They lost to Hawaii in back-to-back games by 3 points and 2 points. They lost to UC Davis in overtime by 2 points, and then they lost to UC Davis in regulation by 2 points. So it's just been heartbreaking. It's been heartbreaking, to say the least, for Long Beach State men's basketball. I'm not trying to be a homer or anything, but I'm just saying that Long Beach State has had 1 or 2 postponements in their season due to COVID outbreaks, and then they also have been losing tight one-score losses. So I gotta give it up to Dan Monson. I give him a shout out for all that he's done and how his team has had to roll with the punches. And if Long Beach State does make noise in the Big West Conference tournament, watch out, my dudes. So looking at the Big West Conference men's basketball standings, then we'll close up. We have UC Santa Barbara leading the conference at 12-3. UC Irvine at 9-4, UC Riverside at 7-4, Bakersfield at 9-7, Cal State Fullerton at 5-7, Cal State Northridge at 5-8, Long Beach State at 4-7, and Cal Poly at 1-14. I guess UC San Diego's conference wins don't count for this season. Darn transition rule. Anyway, we have UC Santa Barbara with a 18-4 record overall, while UC Irvine has a 15-8 record overall. UC Riverside has a 12-7 record overall. Bakersfield has a overall record of 15-10. Fullerton is 6-8. Northridge is 9-11. Long Beach State is 5-10. Cal Poly is 3-18, and UC San Diego is 6-10 overall. So it's looking like the Gauchos are most likely going to be regular season Big West Conference champions. So, good job to the Gauchos! But they still have to prove themselves in the Big West Conference tournament, because only then will they get to be automatically in the Big West Conference tournament. And believe it or not, I don't think any team is safe in the Big West Conference tournament, because UC Irvine has beaten the Gauchos twice. UC Riverside has a win over the Gauchos. Bakersfield works hard despite being a first-year Division I program. And you can't really sleep on some of these other schools like UC Davis, Hawaii, Fullerton always is well coached, and like I said, Long Beach State. Despite all of their one-score losses, I still think they have the potential of possibly pulling out an upset. I'm not saying that just because I'm a Long Beach State student, but I am saying that because you got to respect what Dan Monson does, because otherwise he wouldn't be the head coach of Long Beach State. I'm just saying, y'all. Like, Long Beach State has lost, like I said, they've lost how many one-score games? They've lost 6 one-score games in the Big West Conference. It's not like Long Beach State is losing by like 20 or 30. Just saying, y'all. So there's that little spiel right there. And I think that's going to do it for tonight's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. We are a little over 2 hours, but that's okay because I just want to get all of that out of the way. There'll just be in-depth talk about the men's and women's basketball seasons and also the men's water polo season, as the men's water polo seasons are in the midst of conference tournaments with teams such as USC, UCLA, Pepperdine, LMU, and Cal Baptist. So there's that. But that's going to do it for tonight's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you all for tuning in, whether it's via live stream or via on the replay. Thank you to everyone in the chat room that tuned in, such as Pierre Moss, Davidson Crooks, and Marcus Losgreat. And thank you to everyone who has supported IE Sports Radio, because without you, IE Sports Radio is hardly anything. And we put on for the fans and by the fans. And like I said, make sure you follow IE Sports Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Subscribe to them on YouTube. Follow them on Apple Podcasts, or subscribe to them on Apple Podcasts. And basically just show your full-on support for IE Sports Radio, because we are for the fans, by the fans. And without any further delay, let's get on out of here, because it is past my dinner time. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I definitely appreciate everyone tuning in. We had a longer episode than normal, but that is alright. Unfortunately, there's no shows going on after me, but that is okay because we have plenty of shows going on tomorrow, as we have High Octane Entertainment with Justin Barr going on at 7 a.m. Pacific Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And then we also have a live call of the OVC Men's Basketball Conference Championship. And I said OVC Conference Championship repetitively. Either way, definitely check out that live call of the OVC Championship on USRN. It should be a fun time. Definitely check out all of our sister stations as well. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourselves a great rest of the evening. Have yourselves a great rest of the weekend. Don't stress too much. Enjoy sports. And I will see you on the other side. By the way, one more thing. SoCal Supreme Sports Show will be on next week at 4 p.m. Pacific Time. And then all your other times as well. And it'll only be an hour. So I promise I won't show up 2+ hours of life. Have yourselves a great rest of the night. And remember, SoCal is for SoCal. Peace.